There never seems to be a dull day in news. We got a lot to cover in this video. Everything from the price of food in Canada to you have actual TikTok videos that are teaching people quite literally on TikTok how to break into America in Canada illegally. I don't even know how that content is actually available. And then you also have, if you agree with Pierre Poilievre or disagree with the mainstream media or Justin Trudeau, you are deemed a conspiracy theory person or something along the lines, which isn't new, but that rhetoric on its own is picking up, and I think that they're going to use that to start cracking down heavily on censorship, and it's just getting out of control. Then you also have the wars, plural, right? Israel and the Middle East, Ukraine and Russia. Those are both picking up. And there's speculation for Israel that just launched a massive strike on Lebanon, and it appears like maybe they just used a very small nuclear weapon, but maybe they hit a weapons depot. We're going to be taking a look at that along with many other things, but it really feels like we are getting that much closer to Armageddon. Oh yeah, and Putin updated his list of countries that he hates, and Canada is absolutely on that list. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage everyone to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We need to talk about how to protect ourselves. Now, if you're looking for advice on how to build a bunker, I'm not going to provide that to you right now. But since we do live digitally, right? We all have our email address. It's all linked to Google. You need to be able to protect yourself online, and luckily for you, that's what today's sponsor is all about. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. We've teamed up together and we're offering my audience 83% off for using code SUNSHINE, which can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below. It's no surprise that we're living in a time of censorship, and Canada is unfortunately leading that race because of Justin Trudeau. Now, Justin Trudeau wants to make sure that you can't see the news. He wants to make sure that you can't see certain content on streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, Crave, and you shouldn't have Disney Plus because, of course, our finance minister said if you can't afford things, you should cancel Disney Plus. So the way around this is through a VPN such as Private Internet Access. Now, for those who don't know what a VPN is, it's a way to encrypt your data, basically putting a cloak over you so that you can freely browse the internet without feeling like your personal information is at risk or the government getting and selling your personal information. And the best way that I like to go about this, the best cloak that I like to put over myself is Private Internet Access, which again can be found linked down below in the description or the pinned comment below for 83% off. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring this video. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're going to be taking a look at the polls. We're going to start off with some Canadian news, and then we're going to be taking a look at what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, as well as Israel and the Middle East. So if you want to just fast forward to what's happening with those wars, feel free to do that. If not, just stick around for the full video. You have Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party sitting at 219 projected seats with a bottom line of 189, top end of 240. They still only need 172 for a majority government. It's looking very likely for that. Then you got Justin Trudeau and the Liberals at 68 projected seats, the Bloc at 40, and then NDP Jagmeet Singh at 14 projected seats. I just got to zoom in here, not to be condescending, but because my eyes are bad. That, in fact, does say 14 seats. All right. It's a small number for a very irrelevant politician. Then you got 99% likely across the board for the Conservatives of winning the most seats and 99% likely for an odds of a majority government. So the polls are looking very favorable still for Pierre Poilievre, and I think that in the coming weeks, as you know, the House of Commons, House of Canada rhetoric picks up and these debates are just absolutely spiraling out of control. You saw just recently Jagmeet Singh got up out of his chair into the hall and literally try to pick a fight with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Come fight me, bro. Like it's getting absolutely insane. And if you want to participate in those live streams, I do actually stream every single question period on another channel called House of Canada. Link for that is down in the description. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Now let's get into some of the news. You have tomahawk steaks, according to Marty from up north, posted in Quebec, almost $200 for two little tomahawk steaks. It just feels like everything is getting absolutely out of control. And then speaking of out of control, you have failed immigration minister saying a growing number of international students are claiming asylum in order to stay in Canada after being allowed in on student visas, and then their visas are expiring, so they're trying to claim asylum. And this is a massively flawed issue because we are not cracking down on our borders, on our student visa programs, on our immigration screening properly. And it's so bad now that you actually have smugglers that are advertising illegal Canada-US border crossings on TikTok. Like, this is absolutely insane. In fact, America has a really bad issue with border crossings, not just on their southern border, but also in Canada. There's a lot of people that are abusing the system, that are getting into Canada legally, illegally on, asylum seeking or student visas, and they never, ever attend school. And then they suck dry all of their benefits. You get, I think it was like $6,100 a month, or up to $6,100 or $6,300 a month, along with other lump sum payments in addition, when you seek asylum in Canada. So they get that money, they stay here for a couple of years, however long you're allowed to be on those benefits, and then they flee to America and do the exact same thing. This is absolutely insane, and something needs to happen. And I mean, luckily you have the Liberals that are kind of waking up to this right now, saying, hey, we should have done this a long time ago. This is starting to be frustrating here. It's taking a toll on Canada. But the problem with that is, you people, these Liberals, this guy right here is part of the problem. And he accused everybody that criticized him about the immigration flaws here in Canada. He accused them of being racist, of being conspiracy theorists, of being radical right-wing MAGA maple syrup politics, or whatever the hell he tried to say. Just a bunch of derogatory names is what he's basically tried to do. And it's really, really annoying because he has under his belt, under the flawed liberal immigration programs, let in actual terrorists. Miller made the comments after Stevenson asked if Mohammed Stan, a Pakistani man arrested in Quebec earlier this month while allegedly plotting a terrorist attack against Jews in New York City, had claimed asylum after entering Canada on a student visa in 2013. So an actual terrorist who was going to commit an act of terror in New York City, which claimed to be the largest since 9/11, came here on a student visa, and he's not the only terrorist to have done so. This is very, very concerning. Canadians have been talking about this for a very long time, but of course, I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then you have a failed Liberal MP Minister Jean-Yves, newly appointed Quebec lieutenant, suggests that the Liberal by-election loss in Montreal wasn't about government policies. They're not losing elections because of government policies, folks, but rather voters are expressing their dissatisfaction with their personal lives and what they see our planet going through. So if you don't vote Justin Trudeau and Liberals, it's not because you don't like Justin Trudeau and their policies. It's because your life sucks, according to the Liberals. That logic is absolutely insane. Talk about being so incompetent, so ignorant to the fact that their delusions, they're surrounding themselves with their own little yes men posse, which is all themselves. That's such a wild claim to make. But let's take a look at what he says here on CTV Power Play with Vashi.
Is the by-election result the one where your party went from, having a 20-point margin of victory in the last general election to losing to the Bloc Québécois? Is that not a repudiation of the Liberals in Quebec?
Well, the by-election result, as you imply, wasn't good news for us, and certainly not the thing that loads of volunteers gave their time for up to last Monday. So it was a shock. It was very sad for those volunteers to see the result, and we obviously have a lot of gratitude for the work they did. Now, the important thing with such a result is to take the lessons, to see what were the reasons for that outcome. We still have to do a little more work to understand that fully. What I can tell you briefly, Vashi, that is true in Canada and elsewhere in the world, that people often feel unsatisfied with where they are in life. However, having campaigned in La Salle, Verdun, et Mar, I heard very little dissatisfaction with the policies that we're putting into place to help grow the economy, to support the middle class, fight against climate change, and all the things that people in general very strongly support.
And I heard you make those comments this week, and with great respect, they were confusing to me. Essentially, that people like your party and what your government is doing, but they don't like their own lot in life. Isn't that kind of blaming the voter for the outcome?
No, I think it's fair, and it's fine that voters express their lack of satisfaction with where they are in their personal lives, where they see our planet going with the wars and the climate crisis and the post-pandemic world inflation. They understand and feel that very strongly. So it's perfectly fine to express that at the by-election in particular. Now, when the general election comes, the contrast with the alternative, because to elect is to choose, with Pierre Poilievre, who wants to cut every possible thing, including dental care, daycare, pharma care, housing, investments. That's where, as citizens, we'll have to make a big choice.
Yeah, I think that people are literally fed up with your policies, you people. These people, these politicians have propped themselves up in their minds that they are the only option for doing what's right for democracy, for the greater good of Canada, for the greater good of the world. And yet you see so many people, the majority of people, right? 60-70% of Canadians really do not like Justin Trudeau, not because their lives, our lives are not as great as it could be, but because of the policies, bro. You guys have ruined our lives. Our lives are not great because of your policies. Like, it's just crazy. Can somebody try and make it make sense? And then when you open up social media to see what the hell people are talking about, you have posts like this. Study finds that 84% of Canadians with strongest beliefs in disinformation vote conservative. That's insane. That's a wild claim. Like, where are you even pulling these statistics from? By the way, this has almost 500,000 views on X. 95% of the most disinformed Canadians are planning to vote for CPC or PPC. So if you vote for Pierre, if you vote for Maxime Bernier, if you don't support Justin Trudeau, you are dumb. You believe in disinformation and misinformation. That's pretty much what they are trying to say. That's an absolute absurd claim. These people are kings and queens, self-identified kings and queens of gaslighting. Even if you provide them with actual evidence and statistics and facts, they say, oh no, that's not what's on the mainstream media. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense. And it's actually a crime to gaslight, by the way, liberals. So keep that in mind. That could be used against you. And then you have Ron Butler, the angry mortgage guy, who has this to say in response to that viral post on X. According to this guy, if we don't agree with him, it's because we believe disinformation. Yep, the newest thing academics use to cancel anyone who doesn't agree with them. We're all just dummies who absorb disinformation. We're second-class humans who have always been fooled. And that's pretty much the summary of that post. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then in other news, you have Justin Trudeau, who's making his way, or I guess is currently in New York for the United Nations General Assembly. And he's going to be appearing on a late night show or morning show with Stephen Colbert tomorrow to talk about probably the mis and disinformation in Canada and how all of that is impacting our democracy or some shit like that. It's going to be absolutely horrible and very likely extremely cringe. But here you have the full article from CTV. Prime Minister Trudeau is set to be in New York this week for the 78th meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, probably to talk about democracy, talk about cracking down on censorship, talk about what they're going to do with, the long-range missiles for Ukraine, which we're going to be talking about in a moment. Canada will have a leading role in making the world fairer and more prosperous, Trudeau said in a news release this week. I look forward to working with other leaders to accelerate progress on our shared priorities and build a better future for everyone. While the Prime Minister is attending the Assembly in New York until Wednesday, the Trudeau government is expected to face its first test in the House of Commons since the NDP ended supply and confidence deal with the Liberals. That was the very viral breakup video that Jagmeet Singh had done, saying we're no longer in a coalition with Justin Trudeau. So there is going to be a vote of non-confidence happening this week, likely tomorrow or on Tuesday. And we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But the Bloc has already said we're not going to cut back on our support for the Liberals until we don't get what we want. And Jagmeet says, hold on a second, we're not in a coalition, but I don't want Pierre to be prime minister. So he's still tactically in the coalition. So even though Pierre is putting forward the motion for a vote of non-confidence, it's very likely, extremely likely, that it'll get denied. But you never know. I mean, this could all just be puffing out his chest and trying to be this intimidating act, maybe gain a little bit more momentum, a little bit more clicks on social media for Jagmeet, which he's successfully done. I'll give him that. A lot more people are talking about Jagmeet. A lot of people have now shown respect for Jagmeet, given that he was, ready to fight some hecklers, some protesters outside of Parliament. I personally, I don't like him. I don't think that what he did was appropriate, and I think that he should be conducting himself in a more professional way. But at the same time, I mean, you haven't really seen politicians react that way. So there is an argument to say it was base. But nonetheless, we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. You could very well get a very, very tremendously shocking announcement from that vote of no confidence, where maybe Jagmeet actually votes in favor of it, which could possibly trigger an election, which would be, that would break the internet. And I think a lot of people would be extremely excited and then say, you know what, Jagmeet, you stand up for yourself and you're giving people what they want by triggering an election. Good job. And to be honest, Jagmeet could really use those applause, those good jobs, because when we look back at where he's sitting in the polls with 14 projected seats, it's not looking too good for you, Jagmeet. So hold on to whatever little bit of a reputation you have, because come an election, if it goes the distance next year, 13 months from now, people will not have nearly the amount of respect for you that they do now, which already is very, very little. We're going to shift things over to something a little bit more serious. Putin has updated his countries, or his list of countries that he does not like. In fact, it's quite literally called Russia's just destructive countries list. Countries that pose a threat to Moscow and to, what they would consider democracy in Russia. So let's take a look. So you got a lot of allied countries of Canada and the United States in there. And, there you go. You've got Canada. And last time I checked, Canada, kind of borders Russia. Like, we're very, very close. Our northern borders are very, very close. And I think that people underestimate how bad of a relationship that we have with Russia, and how easy it could be for a war to come here to Canada. A lot of people, a lot of liberals and NDP voters here in Canada are absolutely ignorant to the fact that, look, we live in Canada. There's no way we could ever have a war here. No way bombs would ever fly here in Canada. And I hate to break it to you, but it absolutely could. It very, very well could. Because here's what just happened in Lebanon. So Israel is now upping the ante a little bit. Now, there's speculation as to whether this was nuclear or not. This went absolutely viral yesterday on the internet. We're going to take a look at this strike here that just kind of broke the internet yesterday. So you can see the shockwave, and then you can hear it. Live. Now, some people seem to think that that strike was hitting a weapons depot. I'm not too sure. There's a lot of mixed information out there. But Lebanon's immediate response, Hezbollah's immediate response was this. Lots of red alerts once again in northern Israel. And you could see that the Iron Dome did, in fact, go into full force and had to block a lot of those attacks on Israel. So things are very much getting out of control. And then you have the commander of the Israeli Air Force saying that they are at a high level of readiness and they are prepared to do whatever it takes. Especially in defense, and this has been ongoing for a while. On the offensive side, we've placed all the Air Force's capabilities on standby, ready and flexible and on the shelves. Everything's prepared. We are pulling the plan that best fits the context. It really feels like we're trying to beat the clock. Who is going to fire nuclear weapons first? Now, this wasn't a Hiroshima type of nuclear bomb that you just saw Israel launch. It could have had a small nuclear warhead on it. It could have very well hit a weapons depot and had that insane shockwave. Nonetheless, that was the largest explosion that we have seen in a very, very long time. And it just feels like we're on the brink of something catastrophic that goes above and beyond this conventional warfare. We know that that's the escalation is eventually nuclear. And with the rise of Israel and the Middle East, Russia and Ukraine, it just feels like which war is going to pull the trigger first? Well, it's probably going to be Zelensky. He is very much begging the United States, begging all of NATO to say, hey, please let us use those long-range weapons. We have them. It is our part of our victory plan. Please, 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 please let us use that. Well, not too long ago, once he said that, once NATO started discussing this and it became mainstream media discussion, you did have Putin come out and say, if they use these long-range missiles, we are in a full-blown war with all of NATO, and that is going to eventually lead to the nuclear escalation. Then you have this video here, professionals saying that, hey, by the way, we might actually be cutting out of supporting Ukraine sometime soon. Let's take a listen.
Part of the risk is whether the U.S., with its deeply divided politics, will continue sending Ukraine enough weapons to stave off Russian assaults. Funding for those weapons is set to expire at the end of this month.
If somehow that aid gets cut off, if somehow Europe or the United States does not support Ukraine, then I think it gets very problematic for Ukraine to sustain that fight.
So the United States could and might, and NATO might be cutting back on how much support we give them. And I mean, Putin is ready for this, right? Because if in a panic, Zelensky says, you know what? You guys are cutting back. We need to use these long-range missiles. Putin did say that he warned allowing long-range strikes would mean that NATO and countries of NATO, United States, European countries are at war with Russia. And still to this day, we haven't really seen Russia's military capabilities in full effect. Right? When the war between Russia and Ukraine first broke out, you had a lot of tanks break down, a lot of guns on Russia's side that, didn't really work properly. That's their old kind of decommissioned stuff. They're using the old stuff. Now, what does their up-to-date military technology look like? That's kind of been held close to their chest. We don't fully know. Also, they do say that they have a lot of nuclear weapons and warheads, but again, we still don't really know. They've kind of been it's like a bully in the schoolyard going, look, man, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to kick your ass. And NATO's going, yeah? How about you do it? So much so that the Washington Post feels comfortable enough to put out articles like this. There's a growing realization in the Kremlin that the West is not falling for its nuclear threats, and Putin is searching for new ways to enforce his red lines. Then you have a photo of this here that seems to be, they're doing a parade, and it just feels like, I absolutely believe that Putin could result to nuclear weapons. I don't think he's bluffing, and I don't think the majority of us are under the impression that he's bluffing. I think that a lot of us agree accumulatively, a majority of us can say this is a very real threat and it could lead to nuclear. I don't want to find out. I'm assuming you don't want to find out, but let me know down in the comments if somehow in your mind you do want to find out if they are bluffing or not, because I feel like that could possibly be the end of war. But before the end of the world, you have democracy at stake in Canada. So this is something that I haven't really talked about. There is an article in Canada that if we are indeed at war, we are, because right now we're not at war. We are supplying multiple wars. We're funding a lot of wars. We're giving, Israel a lot of arms and ammunition. We're giving Ukraine a lot of money, a lot of products and things like that, and troops, but we're not deemed at war yet, because if we were, then it would be a lot more serious. But for now, we've just kind of been the arms dealer, so to speak. If for some reason things change, Ukraine launches those missiles, Russia says we're at war, Canada flips the switch, and now all of a sudden Canada is at war. Maybe they don't, maybe they do bring back conscription, who knows. There is an article in Canada, a safety protocol that would allow as a byproduct that if we are deemed at war, they can postpone or even cancel elections here in Canada. Now, this is something to really, really keep in mind, because American elections are coming up, and then Canadian elections are also coming up. And it feels like they've been dragging these wars out a lot longer than they should. There hasn't been that much peace talks or negotiations to happen to solve this. And if for some reason Justin Trudeau says we're officially at war, there's no more elections. Now, would he do that? Would he just declare Canada at war to save face and to keep himself in power without, you can't argue it. It's literally an article. CBC has posted this saying, can an election be postponed or canceled? Yes, it's happened. It hasn't happened, in the 99-year history of Elections Canada, but that's not to say that it couldn't happen. And the interesting timeline of this article being posted is that it went live September 25, almost the anniversary, in 2019. Now, that is before the war in Russia and Ukraine broke out. I mean, they had ongoing conflict, but it hadn't gone insanely public the way it has now. It hadn't escalated to nearly the point of where it is now in 2019. So that's obviously very, very concerning, because if for some reason there's an earlier election, would Justin Trudeau say, you know what, we're at war? It's postponed or it's canceled immediately. You can't argue it. It doesn't matter what Pierre Poilievre does. No amount of filibustering, no amount of voting on confidence. It wouldn't surpass this article, this safety protocol that Canada has. Now, would he do that if there was a snap election? I don't think so. Could he? Yes, he could. Now, let's play out the scenario of a year from now, 13 months from now. It's, fall 2025. There's a federal election. Finally, Canadians get to vote. War with Russia and Ukraine has increased its tensions to the point where now they are displaying nuclear warheads, going, look, this is what we have. We can push this button at any moment if things continue, right? Canada sends some fighter jets over in the north towards the Ukraine border to see what they're doing, try to patrol. Maybe our Navy's doing that. Increased tensions no matter how you look at it, right? There's too many scenarios I could play out to possibly go over all of them in the rest of this video. Could Justin Trudeau in that moment say, you know what, we've been waiting for an election. I understand Canadians are very patient, or have been very patient, and they're ready to vote, but we are officially at war. Could Justin Trudeau do that? Yes, he absolutely could. Would Justin Trudeau do that? That's what everyone would like to know. And my answer is, I feel like we're living in a time where Justin Trudeau knows that he's not going to win. It's impossible. Look at the polls. There is nothing that he could do to possibly, there's nothing. There's no mixture of words. There's no combination of things he could do, of policies he could implement, of things he could say in order for him to gain the trust of Canadians. So what does that leave him? It leaves him with this one and only option right here: postponing the election or canceling an election to maintain power, because Canada is declared in a state of war, whether that's with the Middle East, whether that's with Russia, we don't know. But yes, it absolutely is possible. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely frightening. Love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about any of the topics that were covered. On your way out, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash that like button and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.